Welcome all. Today we have an episode from our Hot Topic series, truly like no other. I'm Gary7MT for the GTA series videos crew, and in this video, we got something extra. We're going back, way back, to the 3D era's roots, to the spirit and soulless self of the entire Grand Theft Auto series. We're going to get into the GTA 3's beta content, but this time, thanks to rare inside news, we're going deeper still than ever before. As some of you may know, thanks to our other video series, we're really into collecting. And if you call yourself a collector, your goal is always going to be to try to get specific, hard-to-find items. Even electronic press kits, together with press clippings and briefing books from GTA 3's presentation at the 2001 E3. Some things are definitely harder to find and acquire than others, but every collector has their own holy grail. And holy grails usually include stuff that was part of the creation process of a game, like original GTA sketches, or this big-ass frame print of GTA San Andreas displayed in Rockstar's New York offices more than a decade ago that shows very familiar artwork, but for the first time with all 4 OG members of the Grove Street families, including never-before-seen artwork of Big Smoke. There's more, of course, and hopefully we can drop an episode in the future with our Rockstar Collection series. But today we've got something here truly special, an authentic GTA 3 design document dated December 29th, 2000. Now, to break it down for those who don't already understand what this actually is, one could describe it as no less than a seminal instruction manual, a huge, elaborate document delineating in fine detail the entirety of the game. Though it was made to promote the idea of GTA and show those in high places their progress, you should think of it as more than a blueprint for the developers. This book, for the first time, anywhere, births every detail about how things work, how places should look, and even what set of specific sounds are connected to a particular location, or how many vehicles should appear in an area at any given time, how characters should look, behave, how the missions work, and so much more. This may not be a one-of-a-kind item, but it is a rarity. Now, from the jump, this document was probably duplicated dozens of times, so every department or lead developer could have one. Its content was updated on the fly, often with pages of new details and information replacing older ones. From reading the book cover to cover, it's clear some pages are extremely old and explained what the general framework was to be. These pages were written in the very early days of the virtual world's creation, probably from a period when GTA 3 was more idea than functioning game. Go further through the pages and you discover clear speak of a world that has achieved concrete foundations. The fact that this official copy's last update is dated December 2000 in itself tells us most insightfully how the world's seminal development was evolving at the time frame, about a year our time before the game was released. Now, before delving into fine detail, we at GTA series videos respectfully say we know what this document means to many of you. It means as much to us too, y'all. It goes without saying, any GTA fan would love their very own copy of this scarce, original document to dissect from A to Z. As collectors and fans, we surely understand, but we've decided to share the document's content in the form of a video, specifically this video only. And as you can see from the length of it, we ain't half stepping on detail. Thanks are also in order to Mr. Jago, Serju, Son of Big Boss, Jinx, and all the guys behind the Grand Theft Auto 3D mod on GTA forums. Thanks to Game Informer, we do know that GTA 3 was originally intended to be released on the Sega Dreamcast, but considering Sega's situation at the time and that the Dreamcast didn't have the processing power Rockstar required, that version was scrapped, and the project's development evolved with the PlayStation 2 in mind. All told, GTA 3's gestation took a full 27 months, from August 1999 to October 2001, and a team of 23 people between artists, programmers, designers, and musicians. Back in Edinburgh, Leslie Benzies led this team as DMA's lead producer, while additional support came from the New York crew. Despite years of experience and a clear vision for bringing the freedom of the 2D GTAs to fully realize 3D world, understanding the main reason for the GTA series' success wasn't clear, even for Rockstar. They surmised that instant rewards for easy missions, coupled with the fact that we all secretly really want to drive around realistic urban environments we all identify with and shoot stuff up, and do it completely free of consequence, was probably the most obvious reason for its success. With the transition from 2D to full 3D, emotion became an important characteristic of the series as well. Thanks to the ability to have realistic characters with believable faces and voices, the main next step should have been to make the players bond with those characters, feel anger, sadness, joy, and more as they play the game. The first and most important change Rockstar chose to make to GTA 3 was the name itself. Stepping away from any designs derived from the GTA 2 logo by dropping the acronym and creating a logo so iconic it's still used to this day. While this change was emphasized in the 2001 E3 document, there were two features promoters were asked to avoid. One, not to play up the violence, and two, do not use the acronym GTA, but use the full Grand Theft Auto 3 name instead. GTA 3 is set in the present day, away from those future-looking nerd games, loosely based cars on real vehicles, buildings built in American style, and ripping off New York but calling it Liberty City. Featuring areas like the slums, Chinatown, a red light district, docks, and residential, all dicey. Though brightly lit, still scary and full of pedestrians easily recognizable as good, bad, or indifferent. They wanted a final look that was dark and smoggy. And thanks to 3D, shadows could be used to enhance the environment. Vehicles play a large part in the GTA series, and obviously this design document must focus pages on them. First, there are the pages that explain in detail how the various vehicles handle, where every maneuver should fall according to its own unique physics calculations, how every block on the map has a ratio that creates variety in the spawning of vehicles, and all manner of other technical stuff that explains exactly why we got what we got at the end. Cars and boats that are fun to drive. What's interesting is how way back then, Rockstar had thought about implementing incredible sound detail into the game, such as powered car windows being raised and lowered, and hoods opening and closing, or adding airbags, just like in real-world vehicles. Something they haven't done yet, probably because it wouldn't be that much fun stealing a car, hitting the first thing on the road, and then trying to drive with an airbag in your face. Extremely interesting also is this list of every vehicle, starting from the very last one, the wingless Cessna, aka the Dodo. This entry definitely debunks a theory spread in past years, claiming that the game was originally meant to feature the ability to fly airplanes, and that this feature was removed after the events of September 11, 2001 in New York. That means that there were no missions involving a full-winged Dodo before or after 9/11, and that's certainly the case now. There were 3 boats at the time, and 3 boats are what we ended up with. But the story with vehicles is different. The first column of the list indicates the inspiration for the vehicle. The second, a priority value, maybe an in-game value or something tied to development. The third column is for the name of the vehicle in-game. The fourth is for additional details, and the fifth is for the weapons the vehicle should have, which is none for any of them at this point in their development. The lists show a lot of vehicles, and thanks also to some renders available on detailed cards in the design document, we can recognize most of them, but let's look them over one by one. First on our list is an unknown vehicle, the 2-door saloon. There aren't enough details visible to actually say what this was supposed to be. A 2-door saloon vehicle could actually be anything from a Ford Cortina, Escort, or P7 to a Fiat 500. Considering the rest of the list, this car could be the Stallion, despite it being more of a muscle car than a 2-door saloon. Next on the list, we have the ambulance, called Midi-Car, probably intended to be Medicar, the armor truck now known as Securicar, and the army truck known as the Barracks OL. The Beamer is based on a 1995 BMW 530i, now known by players as the Sentinel or Mafia Sentinel. The name Sentinel was given instead to a car based on the 1997 Dodge Intrepid that later became the Kuruma. The speedboat is clearly the speeder. The bus is, well, the bus. And the Esperanto or Esperanto has always been based on the 1976 Cadillac Eldorado. Next is the Aster, based on the Chevrolet Astro van we now know as the Moonbeam. The coach didn't change its name, while the Space or Space Carrier based on the Dodge Caravan is the Blista in GTA 3. The Rumbler became the Banshee considering it's based on the Dodge Viper. The Rumbler was actually the name of a vehicle in GTA 2 that resembled a Dodge Copperhead more than a Viper anyway. Next is a Ferrari Testarossa named Rocket, the Cheetah in GTA 3. And then we have the Panto, based on a Fiat 128, which didn't make the cut at all. The fire truck remained unchanged, like the Stretch. The fishing boat was renamed Reefer. And the Freightliner FLD 120 became the Line Runner. The garbage truck became the Trash Master. The Humvee became the Patriot. The Ice Cream van became the Mr. Whoopi, and the Diablo, inspired by the Lamborghini Diablo, became the Infernus, while also gaining a different, rounder look than what's shown in this render. Then we have two vehicles called Luton. Lutons are specific types of vans. The Luton 1 has a full 3D render, while the card of the second one is empty. The dimensions clearly resemble those of the Mule, and considering that in GTA 3 we have two renditions of the Mule, the default and Mr. Wong's, these could be the ones we're talking about. Or the second Luton could be the Yankee, another rendition of the classic Luton van. Next is the Maurice, inspired by the Chevrolet Nova station wagon, which in the game became the Perennial. We have nothing at all for off-road, apart from being good on bumps and with the special ability of being bouncy, which leads us to the one and only BF injection. The old taxi is clearly the cabbie, and speaking of vehicles, according to the 2001 E3 document, we were supposed to meet various characters inside taxis, 5 or 6 in total, including a Martin Scorsese-style cuckold and a Sean Penn-esque lawyer. This led to the idea that the side mission was originally meant to be less repetitive and maybe feature talking passengers and jobs that are a little more complex than simply drive me here or there.
See the woman in the window? That's my wife.
But let's get back to the vehicles. Next on the list is the Orient, clearly based on a Plymouth Reliant, which became the Mañana despite its characteristics describing it on the list as a 4-door vehicle. The police boat was renamed Predator in the final game, like the cop car ended up with the name Police. And yes, the render is still the one with the blue and white vehicle. The Shark, based on a Porsche Boxster, was the original name of the Stinger, and the little remote control buggy we now know as the RC Bandit was originally named the Bug. The Hachura, inspired by the Ford Riviera, became the Idaho. The Train was originally named Subway Train, like the Enforcer, which is named SWAT Van in the document. Another vehicle dropped from this document is a tank, which looked like this and whose name would have been pronounced Fuck You Too. An APC like that only ended up being added first into San Andreas and then to the Ballad of Gay Tony. Same goes for the Tanker, a vehicle only added a few years later in GTA San Andreas. We know it's a classic fuel tanker by what it says under special on the card. Massive explosion if too damaged, and by the AMCO added after the name on the same card. AMCO is a petroleum company in GTA 3's Liberty City. While the Taxi didn't see any significant change, the vehicle we know as the Bobcat was based on the 1990 Toyota pickup, and the name for it was supposed to have been the U-Jerk truck. Last on the list is the Transit, but we don't have a card for it like the wingless Cessna. This vehicle was probably what we know today as the Pony, despite the Pony being more inspired by the Ford Econoline than the Transit. Various pages focus on weapons and explain their models of collection by simply running through its spinning 3D model and how they can also be obtained from crates, special cars, or special buildings. There are schematics explaining exactly how each weapon works, from the stance to which button makes it work, the damage affected, percentage of damage inflicted, radius, etc. Each weapon is also accompanied by a cute sketch of Claude holding it. Thanks to the sketches and the list of weapons, we can see that at this point in development, Claude would have also been able to use weapons like a golf club, a crowbar, a weapon called Magnum, probably a Colt revolver or Desert Eagle, a silenced pistol and silenced Uzi, a minigun for which we have the details but the images are the same as the rocket launchers, and a time bomb, also called a satchel charge. This is probably the landmine of which we still have the model and the textures inside the game. The explanations then move on to targeting, detailing exactly what we ended up with. 2 targeting systems, free aim and lock on, plus the special camera when we use weapons like the sniper rifle, which, in the document, is explained with the words, "This would use a similar targeting system to the one used for the sniper rifle in GoldenEye," referring to the popular first-person shooter made by Rare in 1997 for Nintendo 64, which actually was pretty advanced for its time, marking a point in history demonstrating the viability of consoles as platforms for a shooter game. But there's more. Thanks to the work of 2 valued members of GDAforums.com, Firehead and The Hero, also known as AAP, more details have been discovered. We're talking about the addition of a first-person view camera in GTA 3, a feature that took over a decade to appear in the series, first seen in the PS4, Xbox One, and PC versions of GTA 5. Without delving too far into details, Game Informer provided an initial glimpse of the first-person view with this screenshot and text. The first-person view camera was conceived and developed for the PC version and featured dedicated animations and different points of view, but was never fully completed. Later, the camera view was edited to include the protagonist on screen, rather than just an arm and weapon. Thus, the original version of the first-person camera never made the cut. Liberty City is undoubtedly the main protagonist of GTA 3, just like any of the other cities featured in every GTA. There are no maps or details in the document apart from small cards giving technical info about blocks and areas and identifying the features of the place, the area's style, what kinds of vehicles and pads to spawn, and the sounds associated with it are also detailed. An interesting tidbit is given in a paragraph concerning building destruction. According to the document, destroying all buildings would be impossible, but we can define some buildings that can be blown up. For example, mission can require this type of destruction. Take out the Kiki restaurant on 42nd Street. Once a building has been destroyed, it will remain in that state for the duration of the game, giving the player a "I did that" feeling every time they drive past. That is exactly what happens during the mission Blowfish, where the player drives a trash master into the Triad Fish Factory, destroying it in an explosion. And speaking of the places, let's look at the common ones first. Each of the districts should have had the following: police stations, used as restart points and mission locations, medical facilities where players can enter to obtain health, and fire stations, used as mission locations. Even if not specified as a mission location, the card might identify a place with the related odd job, like the bus stops and the train stations, marked as places where the player could start side missions focused on driving the bus or train. Other common places are gun shops used to buy weapons, the respray shop used to repair cars and drop wanted levels to 0, and a bomb shop where the player can have bombs fitted to vehicles. The radio station was marked as a mission location, and the bank as both mission and odd job locations. Players would be able to steal armored cars, supplying the bank with money. We'll next move on to the industrial sector, also called District 1, a dark, grimy, rough, and polluted area. Here we have Chinatown, the docks that supposedly were to have had forklifts, something not present in GTA 3, the union offices marked as a mini-gang area, same as the slums, described as an area full of rubbish, graffiti bins, broken windows, boarded-up windows, fire escapes, leaking pipes, playgrounds, concrete and mesh-covered corner shops where people could hear screaming, crying, shouting, and loud music. Then we have the warehouses used for missions, with the ability to allow vehicles to enter, which are probably the main inspiration for the import-export missions. Before quitting odd jobs, Portland should have had a multi-story car park used as a playground for a racing side job and also as a mission location. The car park would have been full of vehicles, customers, and security guards, so the building was probably meant to be attached to a mall or something like that. Another area would have been the one with the factory, where the player should have been able to start a side mission focused on running deliveries. The area had forklifts, trucks, and construction workers. What's interesting is that the main inspiration for this area was Leith, a port area in the north of the city of Edinburgh, where Rockstar North offices actually were located at that time before moving after the success of GTA San Andreas. Then we have two of the main areas rumored to have been removed in Portland: the power plant and the chemical plant. The first should have been a fenced-off mission location full of signs, company logos, flashing lights, and people in white overalls. The chemical plant, too, was an area marked as a fenced-off mission location full of danger signs and company logos and white overalled workers. Not many details are known about this area, but thanks to a couple images, we know that both places were located in a peninsula in the northwest of Portland. After that, we have the garages, lockups, where the players could start a side mission stealing cars. Some of them may have even contained spray booths to clean the vehicles. Next is the park, filled with all kinds of pads during the day, but only criminals at night. And yes, like the waste ground, this area was cut as well, envisioned as an area full of winos, wrecked cars, and bumpy roads. The junkyard was retained, but the side mission to bring cars was removed together with the strange owner. The red light district was instead kept, but JJ the Pimp was removed along with an odd job related to him. Maybe it's the same pimpin' side mission we can play in GTA San Andreas instead. The strip club would have had a cheerful interior full of strippers, drunks, and pervs. The road tunnel, like the basketball court, was retained. Clubs and bars were supposed to have had interiors with young, drunk people and music. The abattoir wasn't removed, but we lost the interior, the white overall and hat-wearing workers, and sleazy men, together with trucks full of sheep. In Portland, we would also had the storm drains a la Los Santos, where we could have got some car racing jumping off as an odd job, and a marina with wooden jetties and small boat berthing, where we could have started another side activity, boat racing. The pages then begin to list mission locations tied to characters. First, Salvatore Leone, whose name during development was Frankie, was supposed to inhabit a fat mansion that had a pool out back with Maria but was cut, along with the pair's cars. Also, the area was supposed to be surrounded by bodyguards, but in the game, there are none. Next is Joey's garage, which seems to have survived unchanged from what we read in the description, while in the script, this place is described way different. Joey hangs out in a warehouse that has been transformed into a very well-equipped garage. It has a walled yard out front with a sliding gate, which leads to the door to the workshop proper within the warehouse. The gates into the warehouse are closed, and if Joey emerges to speak to the player, he will exit the warehouse through a secondary door set into the bigger gates. The garage has an air of busyness with a cacophony of workshop noises emanating from within pneumatic wrenches, the high-pitched whine of screwdrivers, and the squeak of arc welders. Standing with an ever-so-slight slouch, Joey emphasizes gesticulations with the heavy monkey wrench that is always at his side. Tony's mom's restaurant, located in an area called Little Italy, had Tony, his mom, customers, and all kinds of pads. It's also marked as a mini-gang location, with buildings in the classic red brick style. Same goes for Luigi's Club, a club in the red light district, full of Johns together with Luigi and his bodyguard Muscles. Then we move to the second district, called Commercial, basically Manhattan as written in the document. The island has a marina and an underground car park like the ones in Portland. It was also to feature an international port full of piers, car parks, warehouses, a massive area with aircraft carriers and cruise liners that was clearly scrapped completely. Again, we can get an idea of what this area was supposed to be like by looking at the beta map. Here we can see a lot of sketched warehouses and buildings along with a very, very long ship, probably one of the cruise liners mentioned before. Another massive area dropped was the airport, placed in the northern area of Staunton Island. The scope the developers had in mind was clearly too massive for that time, and despite most of that being scrapped, the entire airport area was moved to the south of the 3rd District, an area that, as of December 2000, wasn't clearly developed yet. Still in Staunton, the island would have been full of restaurants, with outside seating, menus, umbrellas, flower pots, waiters, and pads of all kinds. The Staunton Island City Hall was supposed to be a museum, and the island would have been filled with theaters, all inaccessible, unfortunately. The casino, like the football stadium, was already programmed and both places had their own specific sets of pads. Other areas were dedicated to offices and hotels, and there was supposed to be a certain corporate HQ, but no deeper description is given. The courthouse and town hall are in the same building, a building appearing in the final game. Both are marked as mission locations, full of town officials, judges, lawyers, police, criminals, and normal pads. Wall Street was supposed to have had armored cars that we could steal as an odd job, and the island as a shopping mall. Times Square was marked as a mission location and features scenery like Central Park, Broadway, and the university. Tied to the campus was a university science area labeled a mission location, and weapons area with students and professors along with various vehicles described as mostly very shit cars. Another scrapped area is the ferry port, used as a mission location and as an area allowing players to cross the water with their vehicles without using bridges or tunnels. The area was supposed to have ferry workers all around in various cars and boats. We have an idea of what this area would have been thanks to GTA Liberty City Stories, a prequel to GTA 3 developed years later that has in Portland and Staunton Island a fully functional ferry port. And speaking of boats, one or more large static boats were supposed to be around Staunton Island. This was to be a mini-gang area full of sailors. Two other scrapped locations are the lawyer's offices and the car hire, a business where we could have started an odd job consisting of returning stolen cars. And while we're still on side missions, another one that didn't make the cut was tied to the cathedral, where we were supposed to traverse the city, gathering churchgoers and bringing them to the cathedral for mass. As for the character locations tied to the Yakuza, we have Toshiro's skyscraper, a contact point, which means Toshiro would have been a character we would have worked for, Kenji's casino, and Komuri's condo, with the latter being Asuka Kassen's beta name. As for the other characters, Machowski was tied to a cafe, not the Belleville Park's public bathrooms, and Maria was supposed to be in a posh hotel, not Asuka's apartment. And that brings us to the third district, called Suburbia in the document, and Shoreside Vale in the final game. The first card is for a skanky zone called the Multis, a mission location and mini-gang area full of towering, graffitied concrete skyscrapers. Here, all the stereotypical hood features are on display. Idle swings, broken windows, car parks and garages with junkers everywhere, while gangs and scummy pads roam the pissy streets. Clearly, this is the description of the northwest part of Shoreside, Wichita Gardens. The area called The Projects also recalls Wichita Gardens. This too is a mini-gang area with rundown buildings, shitty vehicles, gangs, and the like. The last location is a skate park, another mini-gang area full of gang members and skateboarders navigating jumps, rails, and half-pipes. Unfortunately, this area was left out too. Completely different is Cliffside Drive, another mini-gang area, but it enjoys swanky people and cars, boats on trailers, fenced, fat houses with long drives, flowers, ponds, swimming pools, tennis courts, and even a golf course on a cliff overlooking the sea, complete with a winding road up to the area. This area could be the northeast part of Shoreside, Cedar Grove, obviously without the golf course. The river and lake is probably the area from the dam to the sea, marked as scenery areas and mission locations. Here we also were supposed to be able to have boat races as odd jobs, probably related to this area because both are marked as separate parts of map. Also is the park, a scenery area with boats. This area could actually be the Staunton View picnic area, but we're not sure. Another scrapped location is a secondhand car dealer full of old-ass cars with for sale signs and a building with huge windows. This is the perfect description of Capital Auto Sales, but that building ended up in Portland instead of Shoreside Vale. This location was also the point where starting an odd job focused on stealing and selling cars, with the latter actually having been added to GTA Liberty City Stories 5 years after the date of this document, like the ferry port. Then we have the mansions, clean, rich, white gated communities brimming with rich folks and expensive cars used in missions. Again, Cedar Grove. The villas too are marked as missions locations, and they're different from the mansions because they're smaller, but still posh, with rich pads and hot cars. The graveyard was supposed to be in this district, but in the end it was moved to Staunton Island. This was supposed to be a clean area surrounded by walls with statues, tombs, gravestones, and a church. Here between mourners and gravediggers, we were supposed to find a hearse, a vehicle only added to the series a year later with Vice City. Next are the Morningstar houses and facility, both quiet areas filled with various cars and Morningstar workers. Not a lot of details on the houses, but the facility was a large high-security compound with large swanky buildings. Both places are marked as missions locations, and strangely enough in GTA 3 there is a company called Morningstar Industries, but exactly what they do is hidden from us uninitiated folks. There are ads around the city, and the headquarters is located in the Morningstar building in Torrington, Staunton Island, with the Morningstar Plaza just in front of it. Clearly, this company had a bigger part in the game before being almost erased. Something else completely erased from the game is the military base and the military test site. The former was a large military base augmented by a security fence and possessing a variety of military vehicles and soldiers throughout the installation. According to the document here, we were supposed to be able to find a mission contact called Major Hale. More about him later when we get into the characters of Grand Theft Auto 3. The military test site seems to be one big firing range because the area is described as a large piece of wasteland surrounded by a security fence saturated with soldiers all over using most vehicles as target practice. Actually sounds kind of fun. Then we have 4 different areas, all tied to Zaibatsu. To those who have never played GTA 2, the Zaibatsu Corporation plays a major role in the game by being the only criminal organization controlling areas in each and every district of Anywhere City, the city in GTA 2. According to a Liberty City Tree article and some commercials, the Zaibatsu is a pharmaceutical company promoting a new drug called Equinox, a wonder drug banned by the FDA for causing psychotic behavior and being practically a more toxic version of PCP. The Zaibatsu's presence in Shoreside Vale was high, starting from their identical Zaibatsu housing, provided by the company to all employees, accompanied by a Zaibatsu vehicle. The test facility is a contact point, meaning we would have worked for the corporation. To be precise, for a contact working in the Zaibatsu High Energies division. Another contact point was the Zaibatsu Villas, a series of identical, very posh, swank houses for the corporation's employees. Additionally, we have the Zaibatsu Skyscraper, a large building still under construction. This too was to be a contact point. Lastly, we had another Zaibatsu property, a mansion called Toshiro's Villa. More about this fella later. The villa was supposed to be a mission location full of various very sporty and expensive vehicles. That's it for the third and final district, but not all for Liberty City. According to the document, there was supposed to be a prison island used for the intro of the game and described as an area full of concrete, bars, and a massive entrance and car park, complete with a security force, barbed wire, tall walls, searchlights, and plenty of darkness. The only pairs accounted for in this area were the bad men. The name of this island could have been Nixon Island, according to an example of a police radio dispatch in the document. Nixon Island is a name already used in the first Grand Theft Auto to identify Rockstar's counterpart of Roosevelt Island, where a prison was actually built through the 19th century after the city of New York bought the island. Interestingly enough, this location is present in GTA 4 and is called Colony Island. Next is the Country Club, a place described as thus. The rich mafia bosses come to the golf course to relax. This is a perfect location for head mashing with a golf club. This location was mainly split into 3 areas. The clubhouse, a plush wooden bar with outdoor tables, parked cars, and golf carts. The practice hut, open and spacious but with no vehicles, only golfers. And the golf course, lush, green, and huge, full of senior citizens and golf carts. Let's chill for a minute before delving too deeply into the characters and vibe on the gangs. According to a page in the document, the game was supposed to have 4 main criminal groups. A mafia, all dressed in smart suits with Italian accents, dedicated to protection rackets. The Yakuza, a bit of a mix, with the more senior gang members dressed in sharp suits, but henchmen wore more street clothes. This group is very organized and very violent. Then there's the street, unorganized thugs who rob liquor stores, do drive-bys, and jack dealers. Of course, we can't forget corrupt cops, little more than criminals with badges whose only intention is to prey on anyone they can. But the other pages tell of a little more than that. We have the Hispanics, led by El Burro of Portland, with 2 of his 5 missions focused on giving the Forellis a bad rap. The Forellis are another mafia family in Portland. Huge protagonists in GTA Liberty City stories, but almost inexistent in GTA 3. The last criminal organization in Portland are the Thongs, who were renamed Triads in the final version. Yardies and Hoods are also mentioned, but their appearance is only shown in the missions table, which is probably one of this document's last updates. What is completely missing from this document is a page giving details about the Masks, an unknown organization we were supposed to fight. It's quite obvious that this group was the first iteration of what later became the Colombian cartel and Catalina itself. The story's concept wasn't significantly changed, but it seems it was made a little better by adding that personal element. Instead of being ambushed, Claude was betrayed. So instead of having a revenge story on a mysterious group, Claude is hunting down people he knows who tried to fuck him over. There are various pages in the document focused on the characters of the game, and even more can be learned from the pages of information about the story, missions, or by looking at the document supplied to all Rockstar employees in attendance at the 2001 E3. The document is a guide on what to do, what to avoid, and what's okay for them to share and whatnot. Let's start with our protagonist, Claude. He's described as an American guy, 5'9", 29 years old, who has a very specific distinguishing feature, a mole on his ass. Well, another detail is that Claude's clothes were supposed to change sometimes, and that this feature was supposed to be completely controlled by the game script, not the player, which is something that actually happens during the first mission of the game. Claude goes from the prison uniform to his classic outfit, but it's a one-time only kind of thing. But the main thing we can learn about Claude can be learned by looking at the script for the introductory mission of GTA 3. According to Rockstar, Claude was always designed as a silent guy. He wasn't supposed to be able to talk, partly to aid people identifying with him, but mostly because they had so many other problems to solve and this didn't seem like a major issue. Rockstar even pushed this concept, affirming in a Q&A that at no point did they plan for Claude to have a voice, and that the quote, "get out of the car" heard in the first ever gameplay footage of the game wasn't genuine. This is fake. This is an old bit of gameplay footage for sure, but we think that the voices were added at a later date by someone online, as at no point did we plan for Claude to have a voice or even design how a speaking protagonist would be implemented until Vice City. In our collection, we have various official press discs created by Take-Two Rockstar Games to promote their titles. In one of them, dated February 23rd, 2001, before that same footage was released by IGN on their website, we have that exact same video. In that video, we can clearly hear someone saying, "Get out of the car," an audio clip from GTA 2 reused and edited for this trailer, while Claude is throwing someone out of the car.
Get out of the car, man! Get out of the car!
But that's not all. On page 172 of the design document, we have the complete script of the cutscenes and missions for the industrial sector, and after some blase woo-woo of which we'll talk later, we also have the lines of dialogue between the character, and we can clearly see that here Claude was supposed to have a voice. Another mission in which Claude has lines is Pulp Friction, the document name for the mission we know as Chaperone. Unfortunately, these are the only lines for Claude in the entire document. Apart from these two, missions are soliloquies from bosses like we're used to. That said, we got tidbits about other characters too. 8-Ball, for example, ended up in jail after one of his devices detonated on a job before he'd properly placed it, which is why his hands are all messed up. 8-Ball's a mafia associate, in fact, the only brother in the group, so everybody knows him. Not only was he always available at his garage in the South Industrial area where players could fit explosives to vehicles, but 8-Ball was also often available at Luigi's club where, for a price, he would sell us other kinds of explosives. Nothing really new about Luigi the Snake Godarelli, apart from being shorter than he looks and, according to his description, would rather charm than shout. Luigi's always accompanied by a 6'7", 35-year-old bodyguard called Muscles, described as bloody huge. We later discover his name's Mickey. The only two people who dare to mess with him are Luigi and Salvatore. Next in line is Joey Leone, Salvatore's son. We're given generic details like his love for motor vehicles and that he prefers overalls to the suit and position in the organization. Tony, whose last name in this document was Fucile, or Fucile if you will, is one of the territorial lieutenants of the Mafia. An aggressive defender, he deals with the family's operations and deals ruthlessly with rivals. Tony is described as an ugly, middle-aged Italian man with a spreading waistline who wears a suit and gold jewelry. He has a violent, crass personality, only mitigated by his mother, who he still lives with. In spite of all this, she still thinks of him as her golden boy. She constantly embarrasses him in front of other mafia members, but people are too scared to tease him about her. Maria is a 25-year-old, 5'10", olive-skinned Italian-American beauty with a toned body and perfectly proportioned assets. She's the designated player love interest throughout the game. As Claude progresses through the levels, his fate becomes intertwined with Maria's. Thanks to GTA San Andreas, we discover that Maria was a waitress at the Caligula's casino where she met Salvatore. The two became a couple from that moment on, but Maria's past, according to the document, was quite different. She moved to Liberty City to study, and like many female students in the States, she turned to erotic dancing to fund her way through college. After a month at Luigi's club, she became a bit of a starlet, and despite Luigi's persuasive ways, she never took up the offer to become one of Luigi's working girls. Inevitably, she attracted Salvatore's attention on one of his many visits to the club, and soon became the center of his amorous advances. As soon as she'd acknowledged his existence, she found herself isolated from the opposite sex. She was Salvatore's girl, whether she loved it or not. She then grew to like Salvatore, but he didn't like her carrying on her education and liked even less her aspirations for a career. She soon found herself housebound, and as Salvatore became more used to her, so the romance waned, and Salvatore's darker side revealed itself. She is now desperate to escape her tragic situation. The last character depicted and described with ties to the mafia is Salvatore, called Frankie Leone at the time this document was written. Salvatore was a 56-year-old, slightly balding, 6-foot man with very Roman features. Sal favors traditional tailoring and carnations in his suit jacket's buttonhole. He's the head of the Leone family and believes in traditional Sicilian family values and expects respect from every quarter. Salvatore suffers fits of explosive rage when wronged, although these outbursts aren't usually directed at people. Whole restaurants, however, have been demolished as his lieutenants try to placate him. It's well known that his wife Maria has borne the brunt of his darkest moves. Already at this point in the game's development, Salvatore's fate was to be killed by the player. Misty's description doesn't offer additional details about her, but we do learn more about Mike Lips and Chunky Dave, known in the final game as Chunky Lee Chong. Both end up as targets in Joey Leone missions.
I got a little job for you, pal. The Farrelly brothers have owed me money for too long and they need to be taught some respect.
Mike Lips was a local businessman and longtime poker player who found himself at the wrong table. He ended up being owned by Joy, according to the document. Chunky Dave instead sold various narcotics through his noodle stand for the mafia, but when he started dealing rapture, or spank as it's known in the final game, he signed his fate at the hands of the mafia. Lastly is Curly Bob, described as the mob's finest gun. That is, until a close call cost him his nerve. He started drinking to calm his nerves to continue being a sniper until finally he was too messed up to shoot straight and dropped down to doing menial tasks for Luigi. His addiction was the key to the masks using him as informer. Moving from Portland to Staunton Island, the first character we meet is Asuka, called Kamuri on some pages. According to this document, Asuka isn't Kenji's sister, but head of security for the Yakuza. A sharp dresser, she oozes self-confidence, preferring chic trouser suits to accentuate her figure and create a more masculine image. Her character is mainly inspired by Lucy Liu from Payback, Ally McBeal, and more. Another character based on famous actors is Ray Machowski, described as a Columbo meets Harvey Keitel. An interesting mix, we admit. He's a 48-year-old, 5'8", dirty cop. According to his backstory, Ray loves money. Everything and everyone else is so expendable that he gained a reputation for losing partners, as we know. What we didn't know is that Ray was supposed to have women sprinkled throughout Liberty, all of which he kept living in a high standard of. Also, Asuka's original concern about Ray was his growing arrogance and air of untouchability, which is leading to the end of his usefulness as a police contact.
This is it. I'm way over my head and I'm starting to drown here. The CIA seems to have a vested interest in Spank, and they don't like us screwing with the cartel.
Kenji is described as a 6-foot, 28-year-old man with delicate, almost elfish Japanese features. Kenji is one of a new breed who's managed to blend ancient Yakuza traditions with the modern capitalism of the States seamlessly and regularly supplies the black market in Japan with American cars. The counterfeit project was his idea, and he saw it as an opportunity to show the Yakuza what an excellent head of the criminal organization and liberty he'd make. Above all, he first wants to make a good impression on Toshiro. We've heard the name before, but now it's time to understand the man behind the name. According to the document, Toshiro is a 62-year-old, 5'6", heavily lined man. His face conveys a serenity and benevolence that belies the power he wields and the number of people he has killed. Impeccably dressed, he carries an ivory-handled cane. Toshiro came to the States as an eager young man in the late 60s and started work as a runner for a family betting shop. He experienced the lingering post-war antipathy toward Japanese immigrants that increased as Japanese manufacturing techniques caused mass unemployment in America. He soon realized that America was not its people, but its opportunities, and so began his Yakuza empire. With the counterfeiting operation, he will have gained the reputation and respect in Japan to allow him to return to an honorable and wealthy retirement. He has a fatherly pride in Kenji's progress within his Yakuza family and has every confidence in leaving the concern in his control. So according to his backstory, as Portland was mainly focused on Claude working for the Mafia, Staten Island was a territory exclusively focused on the Yakuza. But we'll get into that later. For now, just know that Shoreside was also Yakuza turf. Upon reaching Staten Island, we started working for Asuka, moved on to Kenji, then Rei, and lastly Toshiro, with the entire Yakuza arc mainly focused on the counterfeiting operation, which is also the reason why we found ourselves free at the beginning of the game. But here's where the document clearly jumps from a masks-centered story to a version more similar to the one we ended up playing. In the final pages, the masks had been replaced for some time by the Colombian cartel, and Claude's vengeance is now against Catalina, a woman described as Claude's ex-lover, a fiery Latin American beauty, a man-eater, a femme fatale black widow praying mantis bitch with the kind of ambition that sees the dry husks of her ex-lovers fall by the wayside like so many paper-dry corpses. Always climbing to her next goal, there is always something more she desires. Satisfaction is an alien concept to her. She's currently using Miguel La Víbora and the cartel to further her boundless ambition. This describes her perfectly, not only as the character we have in GTA 3, but also the one we met and worked with in GTA San Andreas.
What the fuck did you want?
Nothing. I'm looking for a friend of mine's cousin, Mexican guy. He ain't here.
You? But Cesar said you was a real man.
And while these are all the info about the characters we could obtain from this document, there is more we can still learn from other sources. We already talked about a character named Major Hale. Unfortunately, who the Major is, why he's on the Zaibatsu base in Shoreside, and what kind of missions he would have given us is unknown. Considering his military background, Hale could have had the role that was assigned in the final game to Phil Cassidy, someone who helped provide access to military-grade weapons. Thanks to never-before-seen artwork, we can see how this character was supposed to look. Middle-aged, heavily built, and somewhat intimidating. Hale was clearly a serious person, nothing like Phil Cassidy at all. He does, however, share some similarities with the artwork of Donald Love, despite the age difference. And speaking of Donald Love, many of you may ask where he is in all this. Well, Donald simply isn't part of the game yet. Everything we know tied to the multi-billionaire owner of the Love media conglomerate either doesn't exist yet or is related to characters we've already discussed. More on that when we examine the missions. Love was clearly created in a time frame between December 2000 and June 2001. And we know this because the character is listed in the 2001 E3 document and described as a necrophiliac Donald Trump. Big business and a white man making all the money. He instigates a power struggle between the Yakuza and the Colombian cartel.
If you have a unique commodity, the world and his wife will try to wrestle it from your grasp, even if they have little understanding as to its true value.
At a certain point during its development, Sam Houser intended for GTA 3 to bring characters like Bubba and Brother Marcus from the first GTA along with others from GTA London. These intentions extended to all the gangs from GTA 2 because they had the room to include them all. By the end of 2000, these plans ended up as nothing more than lore shared with a journalist, because as we know, none of any of those characters or gangs ended up in GTA 3. The only exception being El Burro, which, thanks to the already mentioned 2001 E3 document, we know was originally intended to be homosexual.
Now it's time for you to find out why they call me the donkey, huh? Ha ha! I'm gonna reward you personal this time!
Now, one of the more obscure, yet still widely known scrapped characters of GTA 3 is undoubtedly Darkel. Rockstar Games gave an official answer about who this character was in a Q&A article from December of 2011. According to them, Darkel was an insane bum giving insane missions, 5 in total. He was removed long before the 9/11 related game changes, and none of his missions involved Russian communists blowing up a school bus full of children or flying planes into buildings, as was always speculated. According to a preview dated February 2001, Darkel was a brooding old man who wanted you to perform hideous tasks like stealing an ice cream truck, filling it with dynamite, and attracting as many people as possible to it before detonating it. To those familiar with the game, this task is almost identical to El Burro's side mission, Ice Cream, You Scream, and this actually supports Rockstar's words about Darkel. He started with 5 missions and they were slowly all cut. When only 1 or 2 were left, they were all removed as the character just didn't work alongside the others. Unfortunately, of the other 4 missions, we have no info or details. At a certain point, Darkel is mentioned in the 2001 E3 booklet. Listed between characters, the player was supposed to interact with exclusively via phone. In other words, a character that would be heard but never seen. This means that Darkel was still part of the game until June 2001.
I want you to show these punk-ass bitches how a real drive-by works. Take these nines off of here.
But more can be said about Darkel himself, thanks to a page in the document. Darkel was originally meant to be used as a replacement for the kill frenzies we've seen in GTA 1 and 2. Darkel was a stinky, blind tramp who could be found randomly wandering Liberty City, and who always seemed to have some heinous job for Claude. Those jobs weren't critical to the game, but sure were fun to complete. A typical Darkel job would be to kill 20 random businessmen with a rocket launcher in 1 minute. If the player was able to complete the task, he was rewarded accordingly. Considering the mission detailed in the article and the one shown in the document, it's pretty easy to understand why a character like Darkel was cut from the game. Civilians are never a direct target in-game. There are no missions or odd jobs where the game prompts you to murder innocent people. Rather, it's always focused on game members, apparently bad people, or generic vehicles. Getting into his details, not many exist. Darkel's age is unknown, but his height is 5'2", and he may or may not be blind. His special features are listed as unkempt, unhealthy, and vagrant. His smell is so tangible that pedestrians who pass him hold their noses so as not to puke. Darkel is an enigma, described as both a smelly old tramp and shuffling prophet of the apocalypse. Unlike any other game characters, Darkel moves from area to area, being impossible to kill, and always available for bizarre requests, known as special jobs, which could reward anything from useless junk to weapons, armor, snippets of information, or even unlock previously inaccessible areas of the city. The story clearly changed from its first plot to what we ended up with. Unfortunately, we don't have a script of the entire plot. We only have from the beginning to when we unlock the second island, Staunton. This is what the page tells us. Claude has just escaped a successful bank heist with the loot and his gang when the masks ambushed them. This is already a big difference. In the final script, Claude is betrayed by Catalina, who is in cahoots with the Colombian cartel. Instead, Claude and his gang is ambushed by a group called the Masks, who seem to be the main villains according to the script. Left for dead, he is patched up, convicted, and packed off to Liberty to do time. He shares his prison truck with 8-Ball, an explosive expert, an old Japanese gentleman, and a prison guard. 8-Ball's hands are bandaged up. As the small convoy crosses the bridge that leads into Liberty City's industrial sector, they are ambushed by the Yakuza. Their aim is to free the Japanese gentleman, a plate engraver crucial to their counterfeiting plans, and they're keen for there to be no survivors. Almost everything is identical to the final version, with the exception being here the convoy is stopped by the Yakuza, not the Colombians. And then we finally have information about the mysterious Japanese gentleman described as a plate engraver. Plates are used to print cash, so an excellent engraver is fundamental for producing credible counterfeit money. A lucky break sees Claude and 8-Ball escape into the industrial sector. Unable to drive but with knowledge of his home turf, 8-Ball helps Claude get to a club in the red light district where they meet Luigi, an old friend of 8-Ball's and a key member of the local mafia. Luigi offers Claude work. After doing errands in and around Luigi's pimping business, Claude gets to witness the presence of a new drug on the streets, Rapture, and he meets Joey Leone. Actually, nothing new to see here with the exception of the drug's name, Rapture, in this document, Spank in the final game.
There's a new high on the street. Goes by the name of Spank. Some wise guy's been introducing this trash to my girls down Portland Harbor.
Joey's the son of mafia boss Frankie Leone and runs a specialist garage down by the docks where he prepares and booby traps vehicles for missions. His specialty is robbery, hijacking, and anything else that might require mobility around Liberty. While driving on an armored car heist, the masks ambush Claude and the loot is stolen. Apart from Frankie's name changed to Salvatore later in the game, we have a few more details about what Joey was actually involved with. There's no proof to support this description as more than just background for the guy. By the way, it's highly unlikely that we would be able to actually see his services outside of specific missions. With that said, the last sentence is again focused on this mysterious group, the Masks, who again ambush Claude. At this point, it's pretty clear that this group is keeping tabs on our protagonist. Exactly why and how is yet to be discovered. The Mafia is put on a war footing, and Claude is introduced to Tony Fucile. Tony is Frankie's general, a mean little man who switches from subservient mama's boy to violent psychopath at the drop of a pizza. He feels that there is a period of instability coming and that the Mafia must seek to reinforce its grip on the industrial sector before a confrontation with the Masks. Tony here is described exactly the way he's drawn in one piece of early artwork, a little psychopathic man. Also, by checking the second iteration of Tony, we can see a slight resemblance to the actor Joe Pesci. So maybe that was the direction Rockstar was going with this character. That said, clearly the Mafia isn't happy that the Masks are moving into their business, so Tony's job is to prepare the gang for a counteroffensive. To this end, he asks Claude to initiate hostilities with the Thongs, a gang that runs Chinatown. Claude continues to run missions for Tony throughout a bloody gang war before being introduced to Frankie Leone. The player's first meeting with Frankie is also his first with Maria. Maria is young and beautiful and totally trapped in a relationship with her much older and violent husband, a songbird in a barbed wire cage. She only gets to fly when Frankie is doing business at Luigi's. The player's first job for Frankie is to chaperone Maria on one of her nights of freedom. A couple things here. First, the name of the Chinese gang, here called Thongs and not Triads. Secondly is Maria. The Maria we meet in the game is clearly both the victim and the executioner. Sure, she's a fine-ass woman, but she doesn't really channel the classic damsel in distress vibe, which is clearly what Rockstar was going for.
Yeah, I'm sure your new lapdog has everything covered. And isn't he big and strong?
Frankie discovers a grass in the family and Claude is given the job of tailing him. He follows Curly Bob to a meeting with the Masks on a derelict freighter in the docks. He interrogates Curly afterwards and finds that the freighter is a factory manufacturing Rapture. In the game we all played, this mission is clearly cutting the grass. The difference again are the Colombians replacing the Masks and the drug Spank was called Rapture. But what's really interesting here is that as Claude, we were supposed to interrogate Curly after his meeting with the Masks. But how could we do that if our character wasn't able to speak? Frankie decides that enough is enough and the Masks must go. While the Mafia sorts out the Masks on the street, Claude is charged with destroying the Rapture factory. He enlists 8-Ball and together they assault the Mask stronghold. Gaining some revenge for his earlier hospitalization and conviction by killing one of the Mask bosses in a brutal gunfight, Claude helps 8-Ball demolish the freighter in a spectacular fireball. According to this script, Claude and 8-Ball's attack on the freighter was accompanied by the Mafia attack on the streets of the industrial sector against the Masks. During the mission, Claude killed one of the group bosses and destroys the freighter, which actually remained in the final version of the mission in the game. On returning to Frankie's, the player learns that Maria has run away. Frankie is furious and ready to order her death, but Claude persuades him that he might be able to bring her back. As he heads into the commercial sector, the player receives a pager message from Maria. And here we have another huge difference between the script and the final game. According to this version, Salvatore didn't plan a trap for Claude because Maria probably didn't tell him that they were a thing. Maria simply left Salvatore, and Salvatore couldn't accept it. Again, we have another hint at the possibility that our character was actually not mute, because otherwise, how could he have persuaded Salvatore to let Maria live?
I couldn't let him do that. I mean, the worst thing is, it's all my fault because I told him we were an item. Don't ask me why, I don't know.
With that being the preamble and first look at the plot narrated like a short story, more details are given in the document thanks to what we can call the script. Like a screenplay, this part of the document gives details on who is on the set, how cameras should move, what kind of effects should be used, and obviously the lines the characters speak. So let's go back to the beginning of the story and get into the details. Claude is backed out of a bank with two cohorts, all wearing ski masks, all armed, all carrying bags full of cash. The alarm is ringing and the staff and customers are all lying face down on the floors. The players' cohorts turn and run out the back door, while Claude, armed with a shotgun, lets off 2 shots into the ceiling, eliciting screams from those on the floor, showering them with chunks of polystyrene tiling. He then turns to and follows his mates. The player is gunned down, and the lead mask strolls over and takes the player's bag. Fade to black, with the dual shock beating out a weak pulse. The players can hear paramedics, surgeons, judge, and jury saving his life and convicting him respectively. The clamor of voices becomes louder and louder until the judge's gavel silences the crowd like a gunshot. This marker coincides with a sudden switch to bright white. The player's view clears a little as we soar in the sky above Liberty. There is no sound except the hushed roar of the city below. The player gets a look at the different areas to be explored in Liberty as the camera sails about the sky. This entire scene in the game was replaced by a shot of a journal with the voice of a journalist explaining what happened. Also, the entire presentation of Liberty City was removed, probably due to an extremely limited field of view. Showing an empty city with details popping up here and there surely ain't the best way to introduce a game. We focus attention on the suspension bridge that leads into the industrial sector and a police convoy heading that way. The camera swoops down into the thunder of the early morning traffic, dropping in behind the prison truck. While a body-kicking tune starts, 2 black vans speed past the camera, overtaking the convoy. Here, the opening credits start to punctuate and accentuate the action with freeze frames and strobed visual effects. Inside the truck, we see the player sitting beside another convict, 8-Ball, who has bandaged hands. The player looks up at an old Japanese gentleman flanked by a guard sitting opposite. The OJG, old Japanese gentleman, turns his head away and looks out of the thick armored glass in the rear door. Cut to a camera following the truck at about 3 meters. We can see the OJG looking out of the rear window. The camera rises above the truck to give a view of the road ahead. In the distance, we can see 2 black vans parked across the road. The camera zooms into the roadblock at hyperspeed and stops, framing 2 Yakuza soldiers who have exited a van and are pointing a rocket launcher at the oncoming convoy. Our POV is blinded by the flash of the rocket launcher while the kick-ass tunes stop abruptly. Camera POV changes to that of the rocket as it flies at hyperspeed towards the leading cop car. POV changes to above and behind the prison truck as the police car is blown into the air, spiraling over the truck, and while the kick-ass tunes blast back into the action. POV switches to behind the Yakuza roadblock, looking towards the convoy as the truck screeches to a sliding stop. The rear police car avoids the truck, handbraking to a stop across the road. The police get out as the Yakes open up with machine guns, but they are rapidly gunned down. The camera stays behind the Yakes as they advance on the truck, emptying their magazines into the truck cab. Civilian vehicles continue to add to the pileup a few meters behind the truck. They go around the back, point the rocket launcher at the rear doors, and shout in Japanese. The doors open and a cop staggers into the sunlight, hands in the air. The old Japanese gentleman gets out, is greeted with a bow from the Yakes, and he is led away. The cop keeps his arms in the air as he turns, following the OJG's progress and keeping an eye on the Yake's guns. His arms lower slowly, then blam! He's whacked in the jaw by a huge bandaged fist. The camera pulls back and we see 8-Ball and Claude stood over the unconscious cop. And here is where Claude's first lines of dialogue came in. As we can clearly see, the Hollywood way of describing the scenes, the cuts and movement of the cameras, the characters and everything else is exactly the kind of stuff we expect from a Rockstar game production today. But just look at the beauty of what we're saying. This is how they were already thinking 20 years ago. There's more in the script about the upcoming missions, so let's peep them. We've already seen in an international 2016 exhibition called Game On, Why Are Video Games So Interesting?, a whiteboard with the entire GTA 3 mission structure that included some additional info and artwork. What we have in this document is basically a paper version of that board. It features dozens of pages focused on how the game should be played, giving as a primary objective getting revenge on the masks by completing a string of 50 to 60 missions, each rewarding the player with cash, useful tools, or cutscenes. The main difference between the document and the board is that the latter was clearly updated to a point that left it closer to the official game release. We know this because we got Donald Love and other characters sporting their final names and pretty much the final names and exact rewards for each and every mission. The document, on the other hand, has all kinds of goodies, from lines of dialogue, objectives, and more. But we decided the best way to do this chapter was to do a line-by-line comparison. We're taking every detail on the missions between the flowchart, the script, and sketches and comparing them with the missions we ended up playing in the game in order. According to the document, missions could have stayed with the player briefed using a cutscene or by reaching a payphone where a talk with the boss would happen. Another way was by bumping into characters, them reaching us in the area we are, instead of us reaching them at their contact points, like it would have been with Darkel. We already talked about the intro, the masks instead of the cartel shooting at Claude, the courthouse, the Yakuza instead of the Colombians attacking the police convoy, and how Claude was supposed to talk with 8-Ball. The rest of the mission was supposed to be more or less the same, with the duo stealing a car, reaching the hideout, changing clothes, and driving to Luigi's. Finally, the mission name, Give Me Liberty, survived. Luigi's very first mission in the document is called by 3 different names: Whore Drop-Off, Hole Drop-Off, and Luigi's Girls. The introductory cutscene was supposed to end with Claude entering the club from the back door and stepping out wearing new clothes, probably a classic mafia suit. Once in the right clothes, we were to steal a 4-door car, pick up Trixie and Misty, 2 of Luigi's girls, by stopping in front of the club. We dropped the first at Reverend Flannery's and the second, Misty, at the clinic. Once that's done, we were to return to Luigi. This mission clearly underwent various iterations, but thanks to the iOS version of the GTA 3 Anniversary Edition, we know that at one point the sequence was inverted, and we had to get the girls from the Reverend and the clinic and then bring them back to Luigi's. From this point on, all missions were supposed to start in the narrow alley with Muscles, Mickey, blocking our way to the back into the club and telling us that Luigi's busy, and that he told him to give us an envelope with the details for the next job. Don't Spank My Bitch Up was called Don't Smack My Bitch Up. And while in the flowchart the mission already mentions the new drug as spank, in the script it's still called Rapture. The mission was also shorter, including only the first part of beating a drug dealer with a baseball bat. No cars to steal, repaint, or park. Thanks to a screen from Electronic Gaming Monthly magazine, we can also see that in another iteration of this mission, the car we had to retrieve was a bright pink Perennial, not a Stallion. Drive Misty for Me, renamed Misty Drive, is unchanged if we ignore Luigi's words and the next 2 missions are inverted between the flowchart and the script, with the flowchart using the same order as the one in the final game. Pump Action Pimp is mostly unchanged, with the script being about some random wise guy, while in the flowchart, Luigi is already pointing his finger at the Diablos. In the Fuzzball, Muscles was supposed to give us the pager, which we magically possess in the game instead, and through it, receive the mission details. According to the script, we need to retrieve a bus, bring it to Luigi's to fill it with his girls, and then reach the Fuzzball on the corner of Street and Street. Not only does that last sentence show a major difference in the mission we played, where we had to retrieve the girls around Portland, but also shows that early in development, Rockstar's intention was to give specific names to each street in the game, something actually done from Grand Theft Auto 4 onwards. The number of missions for Joey changed, with one missing from the script, but let's go in order. Mike Lips's last lunch was called Lips Forelli's Last Lunch, but the mission was the same. Steal his car, fit it with an explosive, then park the car in the same place he left it, and blow it up once Mike Forelli got in. In this version, also by reading Joey's words, it looks like we were supposed to bring Mike's vehicle to Joey's garage, not to 8-Ball as explained some lines later. In the next 3 missions, Joey was supposed to be working under a car and pointing out to us an envelope on a bench containing instructions for the next jobs. Kill Chunky Lee Chong, previously named Kill Chunky Dave, was mostly the same mission we ended up with. The difference being, according to the script, we were supposed to pick up a pump-action shotgun in a store before reaching Chunky in Chinatown. In the flowchart, Van Heist didn't change at all, but according to the script, the armored van was doing the weekly pay run from the bank to the chemical plant we talked about before. The van was supposed to be unescorted, giving us the chance to hit it hard, steal it, and bring it to a warehouse where Joey's guys could crack it. This is the famous mission where we were supposed to be ambushed again by the masks. This is how that event was to unfold according to Rockstar. The warehouse is a ramshackle corrugated steel construction. The warehouse doors slide open and the player drives in. There is a scene of devastation. Numerous overalled bodies lie in pools of blood, and Masked One is standing there with his hooded goons. A goon approaches the van. The player kicks the door open, knocking the goon to the floor, and dives out of the van grabbing the goon's dropped Uzi. The masks open up with Uzis, and the player sprints towards some crates, drums, and dives for cover. As the crates and drums gets riddled with bullets, the player uses the Uzi to cut an arc in the corrugated wall, and he kicks it through. Cut to alley outside. Claude runs down the alley into the street. End cut. Just like in an action movie. Not all of this is available in the flowchart. Another indication of how the pages of this document reflect various stages in the game's development. Joey's 4th mission was called Escort Tony Home instead of Cipriani's Chauffeur, and here too the flowchart and script have discrepancies. In the script, Joey's introduction is centered around the masks, and the mission only required bringing Tony, with Fuchila still as his last name, to his house. In the flowchart instead, the mission is almost identical to the one in the final game. Dead Skunk in the Trunk is the missing mission from the script, while details in the flowchart describes the same mission we actually played. The last one is the getaway and the document called The Bank Job and Daylight Robbery. The latter is the script name of the mission that requires us to get a van, reach the guys, pick them up, and drive to the bank. At this moment, the robbery would start, synchronized to an on-screen timer set to 45 seconds. We were to drive around the block during that time to avoid raising suspicion and stop the van in front of the bank 5 seconds before the alarm goes off to scoop up our boys. With the boys on board, we had to reach a second car they would switch to before disappearing while we disposed of the van at an automotive compactor. On the flowchart, the mission instead was far more similar to the one we played. The difference being, one of the boys had a line of dialogue saying that we should have dropped the team at the safe house, and then again, the vehicle used for the mission should have been taken to the car crusher. Tony's contact point is unchanged. He sits at a table outside his mom's restaurant while various family members drop in to get their orders. Like with Joy, in the flowchart, we can see 5 missions tied to Tony. While only 4 are available in the script, this difference is explained by another flowchart where we can see that Tony's last mission was split into 4 smaller objectives, but we'll talk about that later. First of all, Tony's first mission in the script, taking out the laundry, was directly tied to Joey's mission in which we have to drive Tony to his restaurant. In other words, those 2 missions were consecutive, with Tony's starting as Joey's ended. Between the script and the flowchart, the only real change was dialogue, but the mission itself was practically the same: to blow up 3 laundry vans because they didn't unass that protection money. Now, in the document, they used Molotov cocktails, but in the game, we ended up with grenades. The next mission started with the player sitting at a table, picking up the menu where Tony's instructions are written. Known as a pickup in the game and on the flowchart as Thong Ambush, that name was clearly too indicative of what was going to happen. The mission, again, really didn't change that much. Next is Salvatore's Call to Meeting. Again, same name on the flowchart as in the game, but different in the script. Frankie and Maria. According to the flowchart, the mission was exactly the same as we played in the game. But if we have to consider the script, despite having the same introduction message, this mission was merely used as a bridge to bring the player to Salvatore and unlock his strand. In the script, Tony's fourth mission was called Thongs for the Memory, while on the flowchart and in the game it's called Triads and Tribulations. But let's go in order by looking at the script's versions first. Upon picking up the menu, the player sees this message. The objective of the mission is clear, and even clearer on the other flowchart as the mission requires completing 4 different objectives. 1. Destroying the fish factory. 2. Destroying the fish trucks. 3. Destroying the fish market. And 4. Killing all Thong members. The purpose of this mission was to eradicate the Thongs from Portland once and for all. We know this mission was retouched and split into 2 different ones from looking at the flowchart. In the first mission, we originally had to trash the Triad's fish market in Chinatown and kill at least 20 Triad gang members, while the next mission, called Blowfish, single word in the document, 2 words in the game, required us to collect a dust cart rigged with explosives and park it between the gas canisters at the Triad fish factory, then detonate it. And now to Salvatore's missions. As we said before, according to the script, the player triggered the mission when he arrives outside Salvatore's whilst on Tony's third mission. The name of this mission was originally Pulp Friction, a clear reference to Pulp Fiction's rather eventful dinner date with Vincent Vega and Mia Wallace.
No. I do believe Marsalis, my husband, your boss, told you to take me out and do whatever I wanted.
Later changed simply to Chaperone in the game, it evolved into something quite different. Starting with us outside Sal's mansion, we see several mobster parked cars. As the player exits his car, he's approached by Salvatore. Sal tells the player that he needs a ride to Luigi's and that Maria needs a chaperone for the night. The rest of the cutscene is Salvatore and Maria yelling at each other, with the duo finally entering the player's car at the end. Once Salvatore is dropped at Luigi's for his meeting, the second part of the mission starts with us taking Maria to the Crazy Camel and doing some wild shit. The mission explanation on the flowchart instead is not that different from what we played in the game, with Salvatore and his lieutenants in the house and Maria out for the night. First taken to a dealer, then to a rave, etc. Obviously, if we don't consider the lines of dialogue between Maria, Chico, and Claude, which we've already discussed. From this mission on, the script explains that Salvatore is never available as a mission contact, but that he's the one approaching the player when he needs something. He would have sent us a message on the pager telling us to reach a specific payphone and call him for the details. Anyhow, Salvatore's second mission is called Cutting the Grass, a name kept unchanged for the game. According to the script, Bob was sent on an errand, followed by the player. Grabbed after his meeting with the masks, Bob's brought back to Luigi, who squeezes him for info. On the flowchart instead, the mission is quite similar to the one in the game. Follow the guy after he's inside a taxi. Let him meet with the Colombians labeled the baddies, that's right, no more masked from here on out on the flowchart. Then kill him and call Salvatore from a payphone for updates. The mission Bomb the Base was always marked as a money wall kind of deal. In other words, a mission that won't start unless the player meets specific requirements. In this case, a specific amount of money. In the game, the mission has the same name as the script, while on the flowchart, it's simply identified as Buy Explosives. The next step is the actual mission. In the game called Bomb the Base, Act 2, the flowchart explains the mission exactly as the one we played, while in the script, things go a little different. The objective is still the freighter, but while Claude and 8-Ball are focused on that, the Mafia goons attack the masks on the streets of Portland. After reaching the freighter and killing all the masks, 8-Ball would run onto the ship, kneels by Funnel Thang Whatsit, which we believe is a placeholder to indicate a ventilation duct or some such object, and he fiddles about it, then throws the case with the explosive down the Funnel Thang Whatsit. Cut to Claude and 8-Ball running down the quay towards the camera. There's a dull, deep whoomp noise. Then secondary explosions rip through the hull, culminating in a final blast that destroys the upper superstructure in a huge fireball, breaking the ship's back. And this brings us to Salvatore's last mission, Last Requests, a name used in both the game and the flowchart, while in the script, the mission was called AWOL Mall. According to the flowchart, before starting this mission, we had to complete all of Tony's missions. Then Salvatore would ask us to get a car from around the block from Luigi's and take it to the compactor before the cops find it. Upon reaching the car, Maria pages us and wants us to meet her at the pier near Liberty Bridge. This was Callahan Bridge's beta name. Once there, we discover that Sal was sacrificing us to the cartel to make a pact. Maria, however, was having none of it and decided to escape her gilded cage with Salvatore and let us know that now we were a marked man on Mafia turf. With the help of Asuka, we were then to move to the next island. There was no jealousy or passion whatsoever in Salvatore's motives for selling us out. It was just business. The script instead tells a different story, like we said. The mission name was AWOL Mall and was focused on Maria leaving Salvatore. With him not keen on letting her go, he sends us to find her. We would then receive a page from Maria saying, "Claude, it's me, Maria. I can't explain everything, but you've got to meet me at location in the commercial district. Please hurry." After receiving the message, we were to move to Staunton Island, and once there, a cutscene showing the place triggered. This specific part is explained as such in the script. Because the player can use different routes into the commercial district, the scene should be a generic intro to this second level. Go crazy. And this is where the script ends, but luckily for us, the flowchart instead continues, including the missions for El Burro, the leader of the Diablos. Missing are the missions for Marty Chonks, owner of the Bitchin' Dog Food Factory. On the flowchart, we have 5 missions for El Burro, the first of which was to be called Low Rider Race, instead of Turismo. The mission was practically the same, a race around the industrial area starting at the top of the bridge against 3 other Hispanic rivals. Second mission was called Drive-By Uzi Lou or some shit. This is the missing mission focused on performing quick drive-bys on 2 Forelli restaurants. The idea was to ruin the chain's reputation by gunning down their customers. And if you ask me, that'd do it. But clearly, one can see why something like that got cut out. Again, random civilians are never intended to be targets in the game. El Burro's third mission is Fried Ice Cream, a different take on the in-game mission called Ice Cream, You Scream. According to the flowchart, in this mission, we were supposed to steal a Forelli ice cream truck, rig it with explosives, bring it to a busy pedestrian area, and use the jingle to attract customers. Get a nice crowd around it, start the time bomb, and get the fuck out of Dodge. If this sounds familiar, it's because you remember a familiar plan from Darkel, explained by IGN. In the flowchart, this mission ended up tied to the Hispanics attacking the Forellis instead. The mission actually exists in the game, but with various major differences. First, we have to retrieve a generic Mr. Whoopi truck, not a Forelli one. Secondly, we have to use a remote detonator to trigger the bomb. No timer, no running. Lastly, but most importantly, the targets are not civilians, but a rival gang who'd been threatening El Burro. The next mission in line on the flowchart is Donkey Porn Shipment, which is now known as Big and Veiny. The only difference is that the truck wasn't stolen, but was simply dropping its cargo we had to retrieve. Also, between the game and the flowchart, the last 2 missions are inverted. This takes us to Burn Them All, renamed in-game as Trial by Fire. The mission is more or less the same, killing a bunch of Triad members using a flamethrower. The reason, however, is quite different. In the game, El Burro is mad because the Triads stole and burned his favorite car, but on the flowchart, what the Triads stole and burned was his pet donkey. And that brings us to the missions in the second district, aka Staunton Island. The first person we would have worked for was Maria, according to the script, but unfortunately, as we said, we don't have info about the missions from the script anymore, just the flowchart that was clearly made months after the first version of the story. So, the first mission in Staunton is instead Farewell Salvatore, called Sayonara Salvatore for Asuka, with the mission being exactly the same as the one in the game. The next 2 missions for Asuka were inverted between the flowchart and the game. Paparazzi Purge is unchanged, while Under Surveillance was called Sniper Surveillance on the flowchart. The mission is basically the same, except it didn't involve any Mafia goons, but rather 5 FBI agents. The deal was to kill them using a sniper rifle before the time available expired. Also, after killing the 3rd agent, we'd have the FBI after us. So the mission was supposed to be way harder than the one in the final game. Payday for Ray is exactly the same on the flowchart as it is in the game, while Two-Face Tanner was called Kill Two-Face Tanner. Tanner's car, by the way, was an Eldorado, which could easily be the name of the Esperanto during the beta. And that brings us to Kenji's missions. Kanbu Bust Out is identical in every way. The second mission, called Grand Theft Auto in the game, in the script is named Gone in 60 Seconds, exactly like the 2000 movie with Nicolas Cage. While in the final game we had to steal specific vehicles and bring them to a garage, according to the flowchart, we were actually able to also steal those vehicles if we found them around the city. The drop point in this case was supposed to be a warehouse. Next we have Deal Steal. While the mission kept its name, everything else was very different. Instead of simply stealing a Yardie Lobo, we were supposed to find and kill the Yardies that were going to the deal, steal their car and pick up a load of Yakuza gang members, not just one, then get to the location of the deal. Here, the Yakuza would have killed just about every Colombian, but some of them were to have been able to jump in a car and get away. To complete the mission, we had to kill all the remaining Colombians in the area, then chase down the car and kill those in it too. Shima, the next mission, also kept its name in the final game. But in executing the mission, there was one small difference. After reaching the last pickup, we were supposed to find it trashed and with a sprayed tag over the front of the shop from the Hispanics, at this point still named as such, not the Diablos. This is a point where things start to change, and a lot, from the final game. Instead of Smackdown, the next mission for Kenji was called Save the Old Japanese Gentleman, a mission in which we have to steal a Colombian gang car, use it to infiltrate the Colombians' compound, kill the enemies, and save some old Japanese gentleman that managed to get kidnapped. Again, in the final game, this mission is called Liberator, and it's Donald Love's first mission. As we said before in this document, there are no traces of Love, but despite his absence, these missions are still in the flowchart. They're just from different characters. Kenji's strand would have ended at this point, while Ray's would start with Silent Witness. The mission is more or less the same as Silence the Sneak, the only difference being its target. In the flowchart, it's a witness to the hit on Salvatore Leone, while in the mission, it's Ray's former partner, Leon McCaffrey. The mission Arms Shortage was called Arms Protection, with it being the same as we played. Evidence Dash kept the same name and more or less the same gameplay, but the reasons were quite different. Instead of retrieving 6 pictures of Donald Love feasting in the morgue, we had to retrieve 8 packages of documents collected by Internal Affairs about Ray's activities in one of Ray's old haunts. Lastly, with all the packages retrieved, we were supposed to bring everything back to Ray's hideout instead of torching the vehicle. Gone Fishing and Plaster Blaster in the final game are exactly the same from the names to the missions themselves. In the game, at this point, we were supposed to be working for Donald Love, but as we said, Love is not a character in the design document. Instead of him, we have Toshiro with his first mission called A Drop in the Ocean. Exactly like in the namesake mission for Love, we were supposed to retrieve several packages dropped from a Cessna into the bay. Thanks to the flowchart, we know that the packages were supposed to contain forging plates and that the mission was a decoy to lure the cops away from the real forging plates. Toshiro's second mission was called Getting into the Airport, and it was the second paywall in the game after Bomb the Base. The real plates were in the Cessna, and the customs officials stripped the plane at the airport. To retrieve them, we'd have had to pay a huge cash bribe to either airport security or the customs officers. Completing this mission would have opened the 3rd district, also unlocking the mission Grand Theft Aero for Toshiro. Before continuing with Toshiro's missions, let's talk about the Yardies and the Southside Hoods for a minute. The Yardies had 3 missions instead of the 4 available in the game. The first was called Drug Rush, and it wasn't a simple race like Bling Bling Scramble. The objective of this mission was to deliver some new drug to some freelance pushers before the rivals. In Gang Car Roundup, called Gang Cars, we had to retrieve a Mafia gang car, a Triad gang car, and a Hispanic gang car within a time limit. In the game, this mission's only difference is the name, and the Triad gang car was replaced by a Yakuza gang car. Kingdom Come was called Suicide Bombers, and I don't think I need to explain why that name was changed. The mission itself, however, didn't change much. The Colombians found out that we were working with the Yardies, and they set a trap by rigging some psychos high on Rapture, spanking the game with explosives. The player knows only that he has to steal a car for Muff Daddy, the working name for the character who later became King Courtney. And after discovering the trap, he has to either kill all psychos or escape. The Southside Hoods, simply called the Hoods on the flowchart, are also lacking 1 mission of the 5 we ended up with in the game. The first mission for Dr. G, renamed D-Ice in the game, was called RC Assassin instead of Toyminator. But the mission itself was almost identical, save one small difference. The armored vehicles were police vans, not secure cars used by the Nines to run Spank. Rigged to Blow is the same mission, with the only difference being that the garage to reach was 8 balls, not another one in Portland. Next in line is Bullion Run. Again, same name, same mission. The difference being that we had to collect gold, not platinum, and that there was no Federal Reserve flight, just a van damaged by some hoods that's now losing gold all over the city. The last mission was called Baseball Bats at Dawn, renamed Rumble in the game. The flowchart explains that there is a regular organized rumble between the Zeros, the purple nines in the final version, and the hoods renamed as Red Jacks, and that we were invited to drive everyone there and join in. The two missing missions for the Yardies and the Southside Hoods in the document are Uzi Rider and Uzi Money. Both similar missions where while in a vehicle we have to kill a specific number of gang members from the opposite gang. With the optional missions covered, let's get back to Toshiro's missions, assuming that we've found the amount of money necessary to unlock Suburbia, the third district we all know as Shoreside Vale. As we said, the mission called Grand Theft Arrow, and was more or less the same mission we can play for Donald, reach the plane while some Palantic construction vans speed away, fight the Colombians in the hangar, discover that the plates aren't there anymore, reach the Palantic construction site using a heavy vehicle to break down the fence, and fight our way through the Colombians to reach Catalina, Miguel, and the plates. A bit of clarification here, if we may. Yes, the company was called Palantic Construction, not Panlantic Construction. Second, the construction site wasn't supposed to have such easy access. Third, this is the first time ever in the entire document that Catalina is mentioned. We've already dropped the mysterious masks for the Colombians some time ago, but this is actually the first time both Catalina and Miguel became part of the game.
No es nada, no es nada.
I left you pouring your heart out into the gutter.
Hey, don't shoot, amigo.
Toshiro's fourth mission was called One of the Gang, and it's a unique one. After liberating the old Japanese gentleman and retrieving the plates from the Colombians, the counterfeiting operation can start, and Toshiro organized a party to celebrate it. We were supposed to reach Toshiro at an illegal fight at an underground car park where we would have had the opportunity to bet on one of the fighters. With that done, we had to bring Toshiro to the casino where the party was to be held. But upon our arrival at the party, we were to be attacked from a rooftop. A sniper kills Toshiro despite our reaction time in grabbing a rifle and picking him off. With Toshiro dead, Kenji replaces him as the Yakuza's head in Liberty City. This also opens two new strands of missions, one for Kenji, the other for Asuka. Let's start with Kenji's second strand. The first mission is called Smackdown, in which Kenji asks us to kill all the Yardies pushing Rapture, Spank, for the cartel. The mission is more or less the same as the one we play in the final game, the difference being that sometimes the pusher may have a backup vehicle according to the flowchart, making the mission a little harder. Boss Meet, the second mission, was another unique mission available only in this document. According to the flowchart, the Yardie posse lords are meeting a cartel representative at a defunct factory. In this fun mission, we had to find a way onto a roof and throw Molotov cocktails into their midst, making sure that none got out alive. The third mission is another unique one called Defender. After our attack, the cartel starts hitting Yakuza businesses with sushi restaurants marked as likely targets. Thus, we had to patrol Yakuza territory and rush to the aid of any business paging us. Escort Service, Kenji's fourth mission, is another one of those we play for Donald love, more or less. We have to escort and eventually defend a van holding the first batch of counterfeit cash from the cartel's attacks. The reason why Kenji is worried is because one of the counterfeiters has gone missing, and he fears he might have been kidnapped and tortured or simply turned informer for the cartel for money. Either way, the van was supposed to start from the counterfeiting setup and end up at the casino where the money will be laundered. Kenji's fifth mission was called SWAT the SWAT, and it's another one that didn't make the final game. According to the flowchart, Ray tips off Kenji that the Liberty PD is going to mount a raid on the Yakuza's counterfeiting operation. 3 SWAT vans are going to approach the hideout from different directions to corner any escaping cash, equipment, or Yakuza. And our job was to allow the Yakuza to get away by taking out the SWAT teams by any means necessary. Kenji's last mission is called Kenji's Dead. The mission was meant to be a simple cutscene in which we find Kenji dying, but before he bites it, he manages to tell us that Maria's been kidnapped. This brings us to Asuka's second strand of missions, with the first one called Bait. This mission isn't that different from its namesake we know from the game. In fact, the gameplay is exactly the same, with just details changing. We have Yardies selling spank instead of death squads, the objective being to drive near a group of Yardies, use the horn button to piss them off so that they would chase us into a kill zone filled with Yakuza gang members armed with bazookas. The following mission is Espresso to Go, renamed Espresso to Go in the game, but this is the only difference. Coffee Co. is the name of the third mission, and while it's unique, it's still a direct segue from the previous one. Miguel reveals that the cartel is using a coffee company to import cocaine. Our job was to sneak in, open a door, and let in the Yakuza to kickstart a major shootout. Plain Sailing is the fourth mission, and it's more or less like the mission SAM, except that we were supposed to get a boat to a runway light pontoon, shoot down the aircraft that brings fresh monthly cocaine shipments, collect the crates from the debris in the sea, and stash them in an old dockside warehouse. Our fifth mission was called Emergency Services, and it's another cut mission from the final game. In this one, Asuka is informed that the cartel is flying in reinforcements. After hitting the cocaine shipment, the airport security has been stepped up, making it impossible for us to bribe our way in. We were supposed to steal a fire truck, gather some Yakuza members dressed as firemen, and drive to the airport. Here we were to throw a Molotov cocktail over the fence, hitting any flammable materials to set off the stripped fire alarm so we can get access to the gates. Once inside, we had to reach the plane and massacre the Colombians as they tried to deplane. Asuka's Dead was the sixth and last mission of the second strand for Asuka, and again was probably just a cutscene showing Asuka and all the others dead. With both Kenji's and Asuka's second strands ended, we would unlock the mission marked Man for Ray. According to the flowchart, the CIA is making money from cartel deals and is concerned that the Yakuza are hindering the operation. They discovered that Ray is helping the Japanese gang and decided to rub him out. Now Ray is running scared and needs a ride to the airport. No one's at his contact point, so he sends us a message via pager asking us for help. From this moment on, the CIA is after us too. When we catch up to Ray, we find him dressed in a Hawaiian shirt and with 2 packed bags. With the CIA hot on our heels, we have a limited time to get him to the airport for his flight. To make matters worse, the CIA may even have assistance from Black Ops helicopters. After ending the mission, Ray gives us a shitload of cash. It's a bit more complicated than its namesake mission in the game, but not by much. And that brings us to the end, hitting the third and last paywall in the mission, Cash for Maria. Now we need to raise enough money for Catalina to replace the drugs we stole during Asuka's mission, Plain Sailing. With enough money on our hands, the last 2 missions can be triggered. The first is merely a cutscene called Exchange, nothing more or less than the Exchange opening cutscene. When the player arrives at the Colombian mansion, he's frisked. Stripped of weapons, he's taken to Catalina. After taking the money for Maria's and our freedom, Catalina orders us killed. Claude quickly sows some seeds of doubt in the remaining Colombian goons concerning Catalina's motives, and in the confusion, he fights his way free, grabbing as much firepower as he can on the way. With the cutscene ending, the next mission called Catalina's Escape would have started with the player following Catalina to the dam where her helicopter is waiting. After fighting his way through goons to her, the player would find her injured, and a cutscene would have started giving the player the choice to execute Catalina or leaving her to the police, concluding the story with alternate endings of which unfortunately we have no details at all. And there you have the details for each and every mission, without considering a page full of ideas of possible other missions like knocking out the power plant, recovering a body from the dumpster, limb by limb, kidnapping a baddie, taking him out of town and shooting him, stopping a plane, taking off or chasing and destroying a plane, dodging in and out of moving jets, or pick our mom up from the hospital, kidnap a rich guy's daughter, deliver a music demo to a radio station and hear it on the radio later, or using a funeral to lure gang members together, then killing them all. The possibilities were literally infinite, and it's a shame that some of those ideas or even some of those removed missions never saw the light of day, probably due to that time's limited technology. From its inception, GTA 3 was supposed to feature multiple languages, not voiceovers, mind you. We're talking subtitles, menus, tooltips, etc. We do know the game was translated into 5 languages: English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. At the time, Portuguese and Japanese were other possible choices. While Portuguese never saw an official localization, Japanese became available 2 years after the initial release of the game. Once Rockstar Games made an agreement with Capcom to allow them to localize, publish, and distribute the blockbuster title in the land of the rising sun, things were off and running.
So keep your hands on the wheel. If you don't mess this up, maybe there'll be more work for you.
The document also states that they were planning only 6 radio stations. Then, just a couple of paragraphs after, the number is raised to 8, against the 9 we got in the final game. It also even mentions, albeit with a question mark, the country western genre, one of the few music genres absent from GTA 3. Radios were supposed to have loop times of 16 minutes each, with 32 tunes more or less. They were to be unlocked by reaching new areas in the game, with just 5 radio stations in Portland, a couple more in Staunton, and the remaining available only after unlocking Shoreside Vale. As the document stated, the game would have made inventory visible on the HUD, containing not only the weapons, but any other pickups the player might have. Now, we don't know if it only applies to items like the detonator, or if health and armor pickups, for example, were collectibles that could have been used at different times as well or not. And speaking of health, Claude was supposed to gain health not only by going to the hospital, but also when visiting a pharmacist, known as Chemist. Another idea the developers had was to offer the players various styles of HUDs to choose from. Something never added to the game, but that gave GTA that extremely recognizable look. Among many other things, cash was also meant to buy special cars, of which, unfortunately, we have no details about. There were supposed to be 5 wanted levels, not 6 like we ended up with. In the first 2 wanted levels, we had only cops who won't use their firearms at first, but they would if the wanted level is raised to 2 stars. The 3rd level was for the SWAT team aided by helicopters with miniguns and searchlights. The 4th level was for the FBI. They rolled in unmarked cars and dressed in sharp suits and shades. The last one was for army soldiers, armed with rocket launchers, who were actually supposed to drive around in tanks, jeeps, and APCs. Changing cars unnoticed was a way to confuse police and lower your wanted level, along with heading away from the police using respray garages or completing a mission. Like the player, the pedestrians were also supposed to have their problems with the cops. The list of possible felonies included running over pedestrians, running red lights, speeding, crashing into cars or objects, shooting pedestrians, stealing cars, possessing a firearm, and fleeing cops in vehicles leading to car chases. Cops would only chase wanted pedestrians that are within range, but the cops were also supposed to be able to arrest them, shoot them down, just like in real life, or use their whackers or nightsticks. They would have followed the pedestrian on foot or in their cars. If the ped left his car, they'd continue the chase on foot. If they happened to lose him or their cars got destroyed, they would return to HQ. Almost all of this actually happens in GTA 4. It seems all they needed was a more powerful platform. There's an entire paragraph on the page explaining how peds should behave when injured. There's even a sentence considering the death of the ped and whether or not such deaths would have been a problem for sensors. A way to solve the problem was to let the pedestrians get up after a small pause. Uninjured peds were to have been able to do everything as normal, but an injured one was instead supposed to have access only to a specific set of injured animations. Again, something only added years later in GTA 4. According to their vision, injured peds were supposed to act according to the type and severity of the injury, from stumbling along slowly, dragging their leg behind if the leg was broken, or having their arm hanging limp if their arm got broken. While with serious injuries, peds would lie on the ground and crawl along very slowly. Clearly, not all of this was possible, and dead peds weren't really that much of a problem considering the dismemberment and gore that later became a much beloved feature of the game. Speaking of gore, violence was a topic discussed in almost every preview and review of Grand Theft Auto 3. Every article adhered to the concept that Rockstar Games wasn't interested in creating a video game for kids, but for adults. That their interest was to trigger an evolution of video games, not only as wider media, but as something created by adults for adults. This somehow collided with a snippet that we read from an article inside the official press clippings where the journalist talks about the possibility that DMA was considering developing 2 different versions of GTA 3. The real game for adults, but also another version with muted violence, swearing, and adult themes that aimed for a T rating. Somehow tied to the police are the grasses, a special type of pedestrian that enjoyed ratting out any criminal activity. For example, if they spotted Claude doing some gangster shit, they would run to the nearest phone booth shouting, "Police, police," to inform the law of his wrongdoings. If for some reason the grass didn't make it to a telephone, then Claude gets off scot-free. This feature was actually added later in another Rockstar production, The Warriors.
We need some damn police down here!
Pedestrian-wise, Rockstar's vision was simply ahead of its time.
Let's go rock some toys!
Rockstar was already thinking of gangs working together. Members who had just been walking down the street come run into a fellow gang member's aid fighting some enemy or cop. Peds stopping and talking to each other like friends, leaning against walls, laughing and shaking hands while other peds look at store windows, sexy people, cars, or whatever else they're programmed to like. ATM machines were supposed to dot the map and be used by the pedestrians to withdraw money. Day-night cycles were intended to be actual gameplay features of the experience rather than just graphic aspects. And according to the document, 24 hours in-game was to have lasted 30 minutes, not 24. Plus, the type of peds walking around would have been different according to the time of day, with violent people mostly on the prowl at night. Certain missions are tied to specific hours, but the game was also supposed to make some missions easier or harder depending on whether it was day or night. Escaping the city center during rush hour would have been harder during daytime than during the night, for example. As we said in our Hot Topic episode focused on beta content from GTA 3, the game was originally intended to include a multiplayer mode. While there are no additional details to add to what the community's already uncovered, it is a fact that some game modes could have been played in split screen on one console, so not only as an online feature. At this point of development, there were 5 distinct game types. Death, with the objective being to kill as many of your opponents as possible. Points, where you had to score as many points as possible. Race and stunt race, where the first to finish wins. And lastly, tag, where the player surviving being hunted the longest wins. This amazing document ends with a 2-ad list that ranged from ads and cinema trailers, character lists, save game features, rewards, and more, even taking ideas from Wall. The document is dated December 29th, 2000, almost a year before the release of the game that truly changed the genre. One thing that's clear from reading these pages is that Rockstar has always looked at their productions with a cinematic eye. By pushing themselves and throwing everything into their steaming cauldron of ideas, then busting their asses to make the absolute most of all that amazing hardware to accomplish exactly what they envisioned. Some of the ideas in this document had to be postponed and implemented in subsequent titles only to surface 1, 3, 5, or more years later. Sometimes because those ideas were just too complicated to develop in such short time, or simply because the hardware wasn't powerful enough to give the developers the tools they needed to turn those ideas into actual gameplay features. Well, there you have it. We've learned a lot about the past of a truly trailblazing game that has become a true international cultural icon. We discovered a host of different names, features, and stories that lacked some of the game's most recognizable characters and featured missions that were maybe a little too damn good to be true, but through it all, we became better acquainted with the very soul of Rockstar as a company and Grand Theft Auto as a game. While this surely was a long video, we hope you thought it was as interesting as we do. Above all, we hope you enjoyed it. So keep following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, or jump in our Discord server to holler at other fans of Rockstar Games. From GDA Series Videos, this was Gary 7MT. Peace.